Welcome, vinyl community friends. My name is Catherine. Today I'll be speaking about Phil Collins, English drummer, singer-songwriter, and producer. He started out as being the drummer for Genesis in 1970, and when lead singer Peter Gabriel left in 1975, he eventually became the lead singer of the rock band Genesis. And Phil Collins' first solo album came out in 1981. And in total, as a member of Genesis, plus his solo work and work with other artists, Phil Collins is the most artist with the most top 40 singles in the 1980s. And some of his hit songs are In the Air Tonight, Against All Odds, Take a Look at Me Now, One More Night, Sussudio, and Another Day in Paradise. And this is Phil Collins' memoir. It's a book that I enjoyed very much. He tells his childhood story growing up in West London, and Collins received his first toy drum at the age of 5. He also took piano lessons and auditioned for acting parts in stage plays as a child actor. There are details of him joining the Genesis band and their road to success, and Phil honestly shares his personal stories about going through divorces and his health problems. He had surgery on his neck and his back, and he can no longer perform like he used to. But he tells a really amazing story of how he became a musician and how he became successful, and he gave us some really wonderful songs. And I'll show you one picture in here. I like seeing pictures of when artists are young. So here's a picture of Phil Collins when he was 17 years old. So the first album that I'm going to show today, I'll be showing 4 CDs in this video. The first is his debut album. It's called Face Value. It was released February 13th of 1981. And the background of the songwriting, it's about Phil's first wife, Andrea, filed for divorce in 1979. And Collins began to write songs during a break from activity from Genesis. And the songs are about his personal life. So the photo is a close-up of his face, and it symbolizes the highly personal issues in his songwriting, and it means the listener getting into his head to experience the difficulty of the emotions he was going through with the divorces and also losing custody of his children. The singles on Face Value were In the Air Tonight, released in January 9th of 1981, I Missed Again, February 7th, and I'm Leaving, If Leaving Me is Easy, and Thunder and Lightning. And Face Value was an immediate success with the release of those first 2 singles, and it reached #1 in the UK, Canada, and several other European countries, and in the top 10 in the United States. And the biggest song on this was In the Air Tonight, and that reached #2 in the UK. My favorite song on this album is I Missed Again. It's just an upbeat, catchy tune. The next CD is his 3rd studio album. It's called No Jacket Required, and it was released February 18th of 1985. This album is more up-tempo dance tracks, and it features Helen Terry, Peter Gabriel, and Sting as guest backup vocalists. And the album title comes from an incident at a Chicago, Illinois restaurant. Collins tried to enter the restaurant but didn't meet the dress code that required jacket and tie. So that's where we get the title No Jacket Required. The cover image is a close-up of his face like the debut album, but the red-orange color symbolizes the hot, up-tempo nature of the songs on this album. And our singles on here are Sussudio, One More Night, Don't Lose My Number, and Take Me Home. And No Jacket Required was a huge success worldwide, reaching #1 in the UK for 5 consecutive weeks and reaching #1 in the US for 7 non-consecutive weeks. And it was the second best-selling album of 1985, but the first most-selling album was Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms. And that album also won the Grammy for Best Album of the Year. And my favorite tracks on this album are Don't Lose That Number, and my all-time favorite song by Phil Collins is Take Me Home. It's just a sweet, beautiful song. The next CD I'm going to show is his 4th studio album. It's called But Seriously, released November 20th of 1989 in the UK, and a few days later, November 24th, 1989 in the US. So after Collins finished the Genesis album Invisible Touch and that tour, the group went on hiatus. And by the spring of 1989, Phil had written material for a new solo album with more serious lyrical themes such as social, economic, and political issues. But Seriously was a huge success. And it went worldwide #1 in the UK and the US for 15 non-consecutive weeks. It was the best-selling record of 1990 in the UK. It sold 2.7 million copies and 4 million copies in the USA. The lead single was Another Day in Paradise, and this won the Grammy for Record of the Year. And Collins supported this album with a worldwide tour called Seriously Live. And this is the tour that I saw Phil Collins in Tacoma, Washington in 1990. And I enjoyed the show. So there are some guest musicians on this album. We have Steve Winwood, Dominic Miller, who became Sting's lead guitarist, starting with the Soul Cages album. Eric Clapton is on track 6. David Crosby sings backup vocals on songs 2 and 7, and Stephen Bishop on song number 3. And there are 6 singles released off this album. Another Day in Paradise, I Wish It Would Rain Down, Something Happened on the Way to Heaven, Do You Remember, That's Just the Way It Is, and Hang It On Long Enough. And this is my favorite Phil Collins album. And my favorite song on here is Something Happened on the Way to Heaven. The last CD I'm going to show is called Phil Collins The Hits. This was released October 5th of 1998 in the UK and a day later in the US on October 6th. There are 16 songs on this album, and it's his first greatest hits. It spans his career from 1981 to 1998. And this is Phil Collins' first greatest hits album. For me, it gives me additional songs that aren't on his solo albums. For example, there is one new song. It's True Colors, written by Billy Steinberg and Tom Kelly. And the first recording is the familiar version of Cyndi Lauper on her 1986 album. And I like Phil Collins' version. It's a little bit softer. And we have backup vocals from Kenneth Babyface Edmonds and percussion by Sheila E. And this song reached #2 on the adult contemporary chart. And there are 3 of his movie soundtrack songs. The first one is Separate Lives with Marilyn Martin from the White Knights movie, 1985. The second is a cover song, Groovy Kinda Love, from the film Buster in 1988. And the Against All Odds, which is a signature song for Phil Collins, and that was from the 1984 film. And also the duet Easy Lover with Philip Bailey. This was on Philip Bailey's Chinese Wall album, and that was released in October of '84, and the song Easy Lover reached #2 in the US. So these are my 4 Phil Collins CDs. I appreciate the talent of Phil Collins. I like his drumming and the way he sings. He puts a lot of emotions into his vocal, and he's given us some great songs. Another fun fact, Collins has sold 33.5 million albums in the United States and a total of, let's see, I've got it written down here, 150 million albums worldwide, which makes him one of the best-selling artists of all time. And he is one of the 3 artists to sell over 100 million albums as a solo artist, and he's in the company of the 2 other artists, Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. So thank you for watching this video. Please leave a comment about Phil Collins and his music. And in a future video, I will show some of my Phil Collins Genesis albums and Mike and Mechanics albums. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.